I'm supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. But when you have your own business, all those rules go out the window. And in fact, you embrace those rules going out the window.
Welcome back to Duo On Air. I'm Abby.
And I'm Courtney.
And we're the X agency turned entrepreneurial team that puts the Duo in Duo Collective. Our boutique organic marketing agency specializes in SEO, social media strategy, and branding.
We're an everyday pair of business besties / marketing experts obsessed with helping our community learn more about what it takes to run a business.
Which is why on Duo On Air, we're not holding anything back. We're giving you all the info we know about how to grow your business organically so you can be the confident CEO you were made to be.
And how to navigate life as a small business owner.
Whether it's on your own or with your best friend by your side, so grab your coffee
or your mimosa, we don't judge,
and settle in for a quick value-packed episode of Marketing Tips.
Welcome back to the Duo On Air podcast. This is episode number 47, and today we are chatting about working with your bestie and if it's difficult. I don't know, Abby, is it difficult?
Some days.
Just kidding.
Just kidding.
So This is actually a question that we get a lot. I think a lot of people are very interested in our working relationship, how we got started, if it's difficult, if it's easy, if it's fun, if it's hard. And it's all of those things. But the biggest thing that it is super fun, super passionate, and we would have it no other way. Coming from the agency world and working with a lot of people is great, but we started to kind of lose that passion within that industry and that field and what we were doing. And we got along so well at the agency that we knew that we could get it to work for our own business. And that's how Duo Collective was born. And we definitely learned things about each other that we didn't know about each other at the agency right away. And that's fine. We were expecting that. And we got through those things. But when we say, yes, it is difficult, it was mainly difficult in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We have figured each other out now. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses, which we'll talk about later in the episode. But we really needed to figure out each other's personalities a little bit more, because when we worked at the agency, we worked 9 to 5 together. We didn't talk 24/7 like we do now. It wasn't a marriage, and now it's a marriage. Yeah. So when we first kicked things off, we kind of went back and forth on, this is what I want to do. No, this is what I want to do. This is how I feel about this. That's how I feel about this. So
we were too worried about each other's feelings, to be honest. Like at the beginning, we were like, ooh, how do I talk about this? Like, because it changes. Like when you work at an agency, you have set roles and set things that you're supposed to do. I'm supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this. But when you have your own business, all those rules go out the window. And in fact, you embrace those rules going out the window because you're like, yeah, we're not corporate. We're doing it our own way. And so we didn't want any rules. And so that's when it became like, so who's going to do this? And then if you didn't talk about it, all of a sudden you sat there thinking in your head, well, are they going to do this? Like, oh, they haven't done this, and I really thought they're going to do this, but no one's talking to each other. So like in the beginning, it was very much of, okay, let's how do I ask about this without hurting their feelings? And yes, we had to get over that.
Yeah, we absolutely had to get over that. And if you listen to a handful of our episodes, we bring up our coach Val a lot. And she was definitely the one that helped us kind of break through that at first. She was definitely part business coach, part business therapist. Yes. Yeah. So we had to learn at the very beginning that communication is absolute key when it comes to working with somebody that is also a really good friend of yours outside of work. Abby and I, we're not just business partners. We're friends. We like to hang out outside of work. I love being with her kids and playing with her kids. She loves to come over here and play with my puppy. We like to just go get drinks every once in a while or a coffee. And granted, business gets brought up a lot, but we talk about different things too. And we have different hobbies that we like to do together as well. But it's really all about that communication. And that's what we had to learn at the beginning is, we might hurt each other's feelings. We have hurt each other's feelings before, but we talk it out and we feel so much better after we talk it out. And again, this was more so at the beginning of Duo that we were like, well, I don't want to do this, or like, I feel bad about this. And like, I think there was multiple times where both of us were crying in our closets, not sure what to do. And once we started to talk about it and be super open about it, if I expressed like, Abby, I don't like doing this, or I don't want to do this, or vice versa, we knew how each other felt when it came to that task or when it came to that part of our business. And we felt so much better getting that off of our chest.
Yeah. We were in an overwhelming season when we first started.
Oh, absolutely.
Like extremely overwhelming. And I would like to think that that's never going to happen again. But if it does, we know what we need to do, which is really great. And so I'd say like we made it through the most overwhelming season ever. So I feel like everything else is going to just be a cakewalk. But it was a situation where I went full-time in Duo. I had just had a baby, and that was my second baby. So I also had a toddler running around, and I went full-time in Duo, and Court was still working at the agency. So we were at a point where I needed to push the business forward so Court could go full-time too. And then, but at the same time of me pushing the business forward, that meant more work that was putting more on Court's plate, that was overwhelming her even more, while I had this weird pressure to grow the business as big as possible without overwhelming Court. And it was impossible. Like, if you think about that, that is impossible. So it was a situation where we couldn't do everything, and we had to start being very strategic about what Court was involved in to save her sanity, but to also grow the business. And it's where we needed those roles and we needed those rules because we were at a very overwhelming point of our lives, like just in general. And we both had different things happening, and we knew we couldn't work at the same time. And so like one of the big things at the time was, how do we have calls with clients? And so we were trying to figure that out because Court was like, well, I can't take calls during the day, but people want to talk during the day. And I was like, yeah, if I'm working all day, I don't want to be taking calls at night because that's like when I want to be with my kids. And so it was just like, what do you do? How do you make everyone happy? And then we had this moment where Courtney was like, no one's going to know I exist.
Oh my gosh, that was a hard thing for me to get over. And I think Val even like helped get me through that. But she's just like, show up where you can and how you can. Mm-hmm. And, let Abby be the face of it right now. And when you get to that point of quitting your job, that's where you can come in and show your face more and talk more. Yeah. And honestly, I could still do that better now. I don't. I think I kind of got used to just Abby showing up for us all the time. And I was like, why is this called Duo? It should be called Uno because it's just Abby. But I had to get over it because it was a season of our lives at that time where that's how we had to make it work. And if I wanted to quit my full-time job, that is just how it had to be.
And that's actually, so one of the things we learned during that time was that we can't do live calls all the time based on our schedules, which this might be the case for a lot of people listening too, because you have kids at home or you're running a side job. And so you can't always be live and present at the same time. So we started recording videos. Yep. So Court would record videos of branding or mood boards, and she would record that and share that with the client. And so when we delivered the content, Court was there. She was just in a recorded video. So it's something we still implement into our plan because we can't do live calls all the time. So certain parts of everything end up being delivered via video. And that's something that we learned during that season of our life that still exists now because it makes sense.
Yeah, it's very efficient for us to continue to do that, even now in our own business. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think a lot of it was at the very beginning kind of setting those boundaries too. So this is what I could handle at that time. And this is, what Abby needed to do at that time. And, I had to respect that she didn't want to do evening calls. So therefore I had to be okay with her taking those client calls during the day. So it's really working through a lot of that. Our boundaries look a lot different now than they did then, but it really is setting those boundaries based on the season of your business and where you're at, and being very clear about those boundaries and letting each other know what those boundaries are. And if you start to push those boundaries, you just have to bring it up with them and be very transparent about that.
Yeah. And these are important whether you have a business partner or not. You should have those boundaries set. Absolutely. Because no matter what, even if you don't have a business partner, likely your internal dialogue is conflicting against you. So you need to set those boundaries for yourself just so that you have that guidance.
And I think sometimes we have to remind each other about setting boundaries for each other. Like Abby we'll be working. And then she's like, I haven't been outside since Thursday. And it's like 2 weeks ago. And so I'm like, Abby, shut your computer, go outside, like go do something. And she's like, you know what? You're right. And sometimes she has to tell me like, Courtney, you're stressed out, like go meditate or go, go for a walk or something. So we have to remind each other too, to stick to our boundaries that we have set in place, because sometimes you get so deep into the weeds of working, or you think you've got to get this one thing done. But if you don't take that time to rest and recharge and respect those boundaries, you're going to start to go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, the next thing I'd say that kind of helped us too is like understanding each other's schedules. We basically have a shared like Google personal calendar.
We do.
But it's so important to understand your schedule outside of just work, because work is occasionally bleeds into personal life. Like, and also that's the benefit of running your own business. Like, we don't believe in separated work-life balance. It's all just a big flow. Everything flows together, and you need to make sure that you're happy in all of those aspects. So understanding each other's schedules, like just different things of like when the boys don't have preschool, or when we have appointments, or when our families are coming in town, or when we're going out of town. Like, even if we're working remotely, we're still like, hey, guess what? Like, I'm going to be working remotely this week, but like, here's where I'm going to be and here's what's happening.
Yeah. Like, I can still work. I just won't be at home or something like that. Yeah. I even down to, we just cut our Christmas tree down a couple of days ago. It was in the middle of the week. And I told Abby, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go cut this tree down. So like, I'm going to be MIA for a little bit, but I'll be back. So it's just even down to like those tiny things, which maybe we're a little ridiculous and we tell each other quite literally everything we do. Like, hey, go into the bathroom, be back in 5. But, just letting them know when you're going to be away from your computer too, because that was something at the very beginning too that we struggled with. Abby would be like, are you online? And I would be like, ... no.
Should I be?
So just really, and like, the more we work together, the more we understand each other's schedules. Abby's up at the ass crack of dawn. I am not. I will usually stay up later than Abby. She will, go to bed at a decent time. So it's things like that where you start to understand each other's schedules also.
And that's where, like, we have systems in place. So, like, we use Asana as, like, that's when I'm like, okay, here's all the things I need from you today, Court, whenever you decide to work. Like, I don't need them right now. I just need them at some point. And like, we just have places to put things because we're not going to work at the same hours. Like, who knows if we ever will. Like,
I would love to be a morning person someday, but we'll see.
I'm working on her. We're going to get there. Don't worry.
And so that brings us to our next point of just being transparent and honest about that work schedule and that work flow and workload. If you start to feel burnt out, if you're needing a break, etc. So we really just need to be open with each other. Like, this is when I prefer to work, or like, you put it on my schedule as something that I need to do. Just know that I will get to done by the time that you have it scheduled for, whether or not I do it at the last minute or if I get ahead of it 5 days beforehand.
Yeah. It's kind of that trust factor too. I mean, you have to, like, at the end of the day, we're both like running towards the same goals.
Yes.
It's not like one of us is like, man, I don't really care about that. Like, we both are running towards the same goals. So it's having that trust of like, okay, we talked about this. This is your responsibility. This is mine. We're both going to take care of it. It is what it is. And then we also have the transparency of like, I can't do that right now. Like, I know I said I could, but I just can't because I'm like getting burnt out, or I need to push it, or we made up a deadline that isn't actually real, and we can just push it because we're adding pressure to ourselves.
Yep.
So having those conversations, and also, I mean, I would say even if you don't have a business partner and you're listening to this,
have those conversations with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and like, have an accountability buddy. Yeah. Like, there are so many people that we are friends with outside of just like us that we collaborate with on our business too. So like, there is like so much importance in getting ideas and input from people who aren't ingrained in the everyday details of your business, because we're going to be very biased. But I think that can be a really helpful thing, is just like asking for advice from someone else. And I mean, I love an Instagram voice message, so I do that all the time. But we will do that all the time to our friends and just be like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about launching this? Or what do you think if like we changed this up on our podcast and did this instead?
Yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. Getting that outside feedback or consideration is really, really key too.
Yeah.
So the next one is divide and conquer. So there are going to be things in your business that neither of you want to do. And if you are a solopreneur, there's going to be things you don't want to do too. And that's where you need to sit down and be like, okay, what are the things I need to do? You know, you have a list of 5 things. Let's say 2 of them you don't want to do, 3 that you're really passionate about. Think about outsourcing for one, those 2 things that you just don't like to do or that you dread doing or that you're always behind on. Think about outsourcing. If you can't outsource both of them, maybe just outsource one of them. And then ask yourself too, like, is it necessary? Is this a need or is this kind of a want? Like everybody feels like they have to be everywhere all the time. That's not necessarily the case. Like try to repurpose your content as best as possible, but you don't have to be everywhere all at once all the time. So when it comes to Abby and I, there's things that she does that she doesn't like, but I like them or I dislike them even more. So we have to have that conversation on who's going to divide and conquer what. We try our hardest to make it 50-50. Abby does a lot of kind of the background work that's not necessarily seen, and bless her heart, because you probably wouldn't want me doing it. And this is where she had a lot of that training in the agency days, because this is what she did there. She did a lot of the client communication. You're going to see her talking to clients more than you will me. She does a lot of the finances, because again, it's a goal for 2023 for Courtney. But really dividing and conquering and figuring out who owns what and why, but also making sure that, like, let's say Abby was like, I really love to do this thing and I really love to do it too. We have to sit down and figure out who really loves to do it just a little bit more. So we have to spread the love that way too, because otherwise you can't just load all the things that nobody wants to do onto somebody. We both have to be passionate about what we do, and we're going to have tasks that we have to do that we also don't necessarily love, but they have to be done.
But that's where you can build in an exit plan. Like, there's plenty of things where it's like, I don't love to do it, but it's like, I'm good at it, so you just do it anyways. But it's like, if you knew you had to do that forever and ever for your business, you would likely start to feel really diminished by it, and it would kind of just like weigh you down. But if you have an exit strategy of like, okay, I'm taking this on my plate, this is something I'm going to work on, but come this month or this quarter, we're going to hire someone to outsource this. Yep. We're going to get it to a point that's good. We're going to like check our finances, and we're going to make sure like we're okay to outsource this. So you need to have an exit plan for those things that nobody wants to do, because at the beginning you have to do it all. But as long as you have a growth plan to figure out some way to get it off your plate, you will feel better about doing the stuff you don't want to do.
Yeah. And like Abby said, when you get it to a place where you feel good in your business, you're like, okay, we've got this set up. We've got our social templates set up, our voice set up, but we don't want to run our Instagram anymore. Let's say that's just a scenario. Then
will that ever happen?
It won't happen for us. No. But I think it's relevant to a lot of people out there. Yeah. So, once you get that to a place that you really feel confidently that you can hand it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the really great example of this is blogging. So this is something where I'm good at it. I am an SEO expert. I know what to do. I know the keywords. I know when I write a post, I know like it's going to be 100% like exactly what I want it to be.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so like I know all of that, but if our goals for our business are what they are and we want to grow and do what we want to do, is it realistic for me to think that I can write a blog a week and grow our SEO in that capacity? And no, it isn't realistic. So it's figuring out like, okay, what are our goals? Where does my time needs to be spent? What can be outsourced? And it's one of those situations where it's like done is better than perfect. Yeah.
Yep. So. Absolutely.
So yeah, I'd say, and this is kind of like our last point about this, about working with your bestie and how to make it work. And I'd say it's understanding each other's personalities, our strengths and weaknesses. It's understanding just even how to communicate with each other. Like, I know that Courtney, like anytime we talk about branding feedback,
I can't wait to hear what she's going to say.
You start with the positives every time, always. Like you always start with the positives. And then if you have like any like edits or changes or tweaks, it's like you talk about those second.
Wait,
like,
okay, give me an example. What do you mean?
So like if you share like a brand mood board or a brand inspiration or whatever,
Yep.
I'll never be like, oh, change this, and never mention anything positive about it. Like if I never talked about like, oh, which first off, Courtney is like the best designer in the world. So I've never literally looked at something and been like, this is dog crap, start over. I've never said that. But always start with like, oh my God, I love this. This one's my favorite. Like this one is my favorite one. And I'll be like, oh, I don't like that image.
Yeah.
Like later you talk about that.
Abby's like, Courtney needs a little pat on the back.
Well,
and then I'll tell her
and
what
that's
needs to
probably
change.
true for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to lead with the positives,
That's actually
right?
a good lesson, Abby. I think
is a
you
good
should
lesson.
lead with the positive and then be like, this is
And
what
everything in
can be
life.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, we've learned like early on, like what our Enneagrams are, how we like take feedback. And like, I even know too, like if a client comes back with like very specific feedback, I know the second I read it, even if it's not negative, I know if Court's going to read it negative.
Yes.
And I can just see her being like, oh, I just like don't feel good. And I'm like, walk away.
Yeah. And I can take constructive criticism. It's when I like maybe worked so hard and then I feel like, oh man, they didn't
lead with the positive.
Yeah,
you see
know,
what I'm
it
saying?
leads with the
I
positive,
know.
yeah.
I know. You got to lead with the positive.
Yeah. Yep. I would say something too with Abby that I've noticed is that when she starts to get overwhelmed, she like tells me all the things like, oh my gosh, I have to do this, and this. So I'm like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help? And a lot of what Abby does, I can't do. And a lot of what she does, or I do, she can't do. So that's where sometimes we're like, shit, like I have to own this. But my list keeps growing. But anytime that I can just like step in and help her, even if it is like some of this background stuff, I just say, hey, just like teach me how to do it real quick. I'll jump in and do it. I know you need to have things taken off your plate. So it's just knowing those small things and how to communicate with your business partner and like knowing those strengths and weaknesses and how you can help and build upon those.
Absolutely. And that comes with time too. Like,
yeah, you're always going to constantly learn. Like we're going to constantly have new strengths, new weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
And it'll always be evolving.
We're going to have new boundaries, new schedules, like everything changes all the time. So it's just trying to figure that out. And then it's remembering, like, I would say too, not losing sight of personally what you want. Like, I think that's something that we've been getting better and better at, but it's also understanding like, yes, we are partners in this business and we have a lot of the same visions, but in our personal life, we're also have like different visions in our personal life of what we want to do, how we want to prioritize our time, what our hobbies are. Like, all of those things still matter. So just like in a marriage, you don't lose your identity in the marriage. It's the same thing in a business where you also need to hold true to your own personal values, and you also need to figure out like what your boundaries are alone without even like considering the partnership first too. So I think that's something that like we are always practicing that, and like personally I'm always practicing that because it's like I would work every hour if
yeah, she would. I feel like I have to tell her to stop a lot.
I need to stop.
I would say too, probably the last thing to focus on is like, don't lose sight of you being friends too. Like, you are business partners, yes. And at the end of the day, you are running a business, trying to get leads, trying to make money, trying to support your family. But don't forget that you started this business with that person because you genuinely like them. Like, you want to go to concerts with them and you want to watch the Vikings football game with them. Like, we talk constantly when the Vikings play, and usually it's us stressing out about the game. But like, making sure that you're tapping into those personal things that you guys like together and that made you friends to begin with. Because if it's constantly business, and you lose sight of the fact that you actually are friends and that you have this connection outside of work, then you're going to start to lose that relationship. Your relationship's not going to be as strong as it was when you were friends plus business partners.
Yeah. You got to take breaks and luckily most of our work is fun, but it's also like we still need breaks too. We still need days where we are going out and doing things that are non-work related, because otherwise, everyone's going to get burnt out of that. So you need to do something to fill your cup up, and also just to make sure that yeah, both of you are like, you care about the person, not just about the business and not just about the partnership. Like, that's one of the most important things to remember for sure.
Absolutely.
So whether you have a business partner and you're listening to this and trying to figure out some ways to, I'd say, like, work closely together. I mean, I feel like the common threads that we pulled out here, like boundaries and schedules and communication, and like setting up those like specific project management like resources so that you can communicate with each other too. But then also just like really actually learning each other's like personalities. Like, if you love the Enneagram, there are so many resources out there. We've even Googled before how a 2 and a 4 work together. And like, there's a whole spreadsheet of that, of like how we can work together and how to communicate with each other. And when someone's in like a bad space, how do you work together? And when they're in a good space, how do you work together? Like, there's so much out there in resources. You just actually have to take the time to invest in that, because that is so important. And it's something that we've even talked about doing and having our own little like duo day. One of the things we want to do is have like a relationship building moment within that, which might seem silly.
It might sound so cheesy, but I guarantee you we have a blast. We'll probably share what we learned about each other, maybe a little behind the scenes, but like, it's only going to make us stronger.
Yeah. And it's absolutely like, you need to take the time to do that. If you are working with a partner who is also a friend, like, you absolutely need to take the time to invest in them outside of just the business.
If you liked this episode, please be sure to share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes dropping every Monday. Plus, if you haven't already, please leave us a review and don't hesitate to share any new episode ideas. We love hearing from you and creating this content for you. See you next week.